Hello, I'm Eric, and in the video you're about to watch, I'm fixing an issue where Pewter wasn't properly propagating errors from OpenRouter, an AI provider, back to the user of the Pewter chat completion interface. It's really important to propagate 400 errors properly because they often contain useful information to the developer about what they did wrong, especially when you're using function calling, aka tool use, because that's going to tell you what was wrong with your schema for your functions so that you can fix it and try again. As I'm looking into this issue, I noticed that there's something different about OpenRouter from the other services that we integrate with, which is the 400 error because the request was bad or the function calling syntax was incorrect is not being thrown when we start the chat completion. It's actually being thrown in our async iterator for chunks on the stream on the first iteration on the same line as the for loop. By this point, we have sent headers already, or actually we haven't. I get to that later. And it's a lot more difficult to propagate the error properly. So there's some interesting nuance in this video, and I hope you find it interesting. The first thing I'm going to do is reproduce this issue where 400 responses from OpenRouter aren't getting passed on to the client of Pewter's AI interface. So I just have an example request that I'm running here, and we can see we didn't get a result. If I go to the network tab, the call is stuck in pending state. We can see that in this column here. And there is fortunately an error in the server console that gives kind of an indication of what's going on. It says provider returned error, and I believe the message is over here. Invalid schema for function get whether invalid. What I did is intentionally set type invalid to one of the properties, which is of course not valid. And so we got an error from OpenRouter because the request was bad, and what we need to do is pass that on to the user. There are two things I want to do first. One of them is searching for the string provider returned error, which I probably typed myself, so that's probably in our source code, and I can find where exactly this error is being thrown. The second thing I want to do is look at the Claude and OpenAI implementations and how I handled propagating these errors to the client in those services so that I can be consistent about my implementation for OpenRouter. So the string provider returned error, it turns out, doesn't actually appear in our source code. I see it in the logs, but not in the source code. I believe this is actually coming from the OpenRouter API, actually, because it says provider name OpenAI, and we're going through OpenRouter, OpenAI slash O3Mini. That makes a lot of sense. So now all that's left is to look at how I'm doing the error handling for the other providers on Pewter, so OpenAI and Anthropic, which I believe I'm going to find an AI chat service. This is the service that's always called before the specific implementation. So any common error handling is going to be done here. And that's going to be handled by this is request error. And OpenAI and Claude have different ways of marking an error as being a request error. And I forget which is which here, but I had to check if the type is called invalid request error. And I also had to check if the error has a property called cause or error that has the type invalid request error. So there are these two different situations. In the case of OpenRouter having a request error, it's neither. So what I need to do is add yet another case over here. It should also be noted that this happens during streaming, which is going to make catching the error a little bit trickier because it's not going to be the same control flow as if we were getting the entire response in one go. So given that this is streaming, can we even catch the error? The error is happening on line 105 of OpenAI util, according to the stack trace right here. That is when we're iterating over this async generator that we got for the chat stream from the OpenAI SDK, I believe. Uh, yep, of completion. So when this is being thrown, that means the call here is going to throw. So I need to find the call create chat stream handler. I think that's going to be in OpenRouter service. Create chat stream handler. It's not. It's in, we're calling OpenAI util handle completion output. That's just a function below this one. So that's what's going to be calling it. Handle completion output. And then we have the call to create chat stream, presumably in here. Yep. Or create chat stream handler. That's what it is. On line 169. And we're not awaiting it here. We pass it to typed value AI chat stream intermediate. The AI chat stream intermediate typed value is what we send back to the driver service so that it knows it has to make a streaming response. And this init chat stream, where does it get called? What I said just before, I was missing a step. OpenAI util returns the AI chat intermediate, which is not sent to driver service. Yet it first goes to AI chat service, which checks for this type explicitly. And then if it has an AI chat intermediate, it then returns a stream type with content type application ND-JSON, which is new line delimited JSON. So AI chat service gets an AI chat intermediate from whatever provider, OpenAI, OpenRouter, Anthropic, etc. And then when it sees that, it creates just a generic stream type of object that it sends back up to the driver service. So in here, in AI chat service, is where we call init chat stream, and we don't await init chat stream. And in this case, this is intentional. We don't want this to be blocking. We're going to return this stream that we created upward to driver service, and driver service is just going to start streaming data as init chat stream is iterating over our async iterator up here. So what we need is still a way to handle this error and return it to the client. By the time we start sending a stream, we've already sent headers. That could potentially be a problem. It really sucks that this error is happening on line 105 rather than, for example, on line 133 when we actually get this completion with stream set to true. So this is going to be a little tricky to handle. Either there might be some way we can get the error before headers are sent, even though it's at the beginning of the stream. For example, maybe we only send headers after we get the first object in the stream. I'm not yet sure how complicated that will be. Or the alternative is we add to the sort of the contract of the computer chat interface that you might get an object that tells you there's been an error. Maybe some models will throw errors in the middle of a stream, so that would be a good thing to support anyway. Before I get into that, I'm curious if OpenAI outside of OpenRouter, so just our own OpenAI service, is going to trigger the same error. So I'm going to set model to undefined. We use 4.0 mini by default, I think, with this invalid function call as well, and see if I get an error. And it looks like I do. Do we get a stack trace? We don't get a stack trace, and I actually do need to know where this error is coming from. It's nice that I get an error response, but it's very likely this is coming from a line of code where we're actually able to catch the error. So, for example, in OpenAI completion service on line 250, this might be where we're getting the error. I'm going to quickly put a try catch around this just to see. So we're going to catch E. We're going to rethrow so that I'm not changing the behavior, but I just want to see if I got this here. So I'm going to reload the server, go back to the console. And yes, that seems to be the case. So this situation is different from when we get the error from OpenRouter. Unfortunately, when we're using OpenRouter and the same SDK, we get the error at the beginning of the stream, which is a little odd. So how difficult is it for us to handle the error on the before getting the first message of the stream? Well, when we call a driver, it starts on this endpoint. We call driver service.call. Then we end up in driver service, which is relatively complex. We have this call method with some legacy behavior delegates to a call new method, which has the current behavior for drivers, which goes to this invoker, which checks any usage constraints like monthly usage limits or rate limits, and then it goes to the actual driver. In the case of all of the chat completion drivers, we have this generic controller that's the entry point for all of them. So this is underneath driver service, and then we have the actual implementation. So the situation we find ourselves in is, where's this thing that I'm looking for here? The error handling. Stream. Right, so the situation we find ourselves in is AI chat service is returning a stream. If we had an error handler in here, it'd be really unclear how to pass an error up this stream. This stream is a generic stream. It doesn't know anything about AI services, for example. It's just a stream for new line delimited JSON. Driver service could maybe handle it, but we're actually one level up from that. We're in the route by the time we're actually um, dealing with this stream, and we don't even iterate over the stream. We just pipe it to the response. Do we add error handling here? I don't think that's a good idea. So this idea of changing the response status if we get an error just before the first message of the stream, I'm not sure if that makes sense. We'll probably have to send an object on the stream that indicates an error to the client. We can handle the error here. We know that because this is the line of code where the exception is thrown. I wouldn't want to wrap this entire for loop in a try catch just because that looks a little bit messy. But what I can do is wrap the call to create chat stream handler. No, the call to the return value of create chat stream handler in a try catch if it's awaited. We can see this is init chat stream here, and as I mentioned earlier, that's called an AI chat service. If we handle the error over here, that's better because then we're handling it for all AI implementations, not just OpenRouter, that might throw an error um, on this line of OpenAI util. Sorry, on this line of OpenAI util. So where do we call that function? That's called right here. This is the return value of create chat stream handler. We're not awaiting it, and we don't want to be because we don't want to block this, but we can use what is called an asynchronous immediately invoked function expression, or AIIFE. For the longest time, I didn't know there was actually a term for that, but uh, this is just a function that's an anonymous function that's immediately called, that's asynchronous, that we're not awaiting. That allows us to await this, and then we can catch the error that it throws. If I can type try correctly. Okay. So now, with this error, we want this to go on the stream. We want to be able to send the client a piece of information saying, hey, this error occurred. And I think because the stream is a pass through, I think I can just put a value on the stream. It looks like this stream object we just called .write followed by JSON and the new line delimiter. So I should be able to do this. JSON.stringify. We're going to create an object representing this error, and we're going to add the new line. It's going to be type error, and I'm going to call this message. So if we're lucky, we'll get that from our stream, and I'll call stream end because remember that request was in pending when we got this error. That means we're never ending the request. The treadmill underneath me just turned off suddenly without notice, which confused and distracted me. So let's give this a try. Reloading the server again. We're going to wait to see the pewter logo. And I'm going to send my invalid request. Okay, so did this work? Well, the request did resolve this time. Oh, actually, this test was invalid. I wasn't testing through OpenRouter, which I was intending to do. I was testing through OpenAI still. Look at that. We get an item, and the item says error. So this request is resolving now. Of course, we still get status 200, but we can't really do anything about that. We've already sent headers by the time we're getting this error, and the effort to maybe not send headers before we get this error, it really doesn't seem to be worth it. OpenRouter's kind of throwing this error in, I want to say the wrong place. Maybe it isn't the wrong place for them to throw the error given the architecture they have and how it works. It's just an unfortunate place for the error to be thrown and the complexity added to get a 400 response here. Not really worth it. Semantically, we can say that the request is fine. You formatted a request that's okay for OpenRouter, but then the provider behind OpenRouter, which only is invoked once we're streaming a response that had the error. So you have to get the error in the response. It's just happening at a different layer. Because that's the situation, it would just add unnecessary complexity to make us change how the situation looks to the client. Which generally it's good if we can do that. I'm just not sure that we can here because in driver service, or sorry, not driver service, in call and the route, we are piping this stream to the response before we get this error. And I think this is going to send headers. I'd be very curious to find out if we can figure that out. So this is result pipe response. When we pipe to a response, I don't really know how to, I don't know what pipe calls on response, right? So I'm not sure how to figure that out exactly. Just for the sake of trying this, I'm improperly using some assumptions about the internal implementation of streams. Uh, in particular, that when I call write, I'm going to get this callback called once, uh, which is true, but not something you should rely on. I'm going to parse that, see if it has type error, and if it has type error, I'm going to change the status. Change the status. And I'm going to end the stream, and we'll see if I can get a 400 response on that first message, or if it's going to complain that headers have already been sent. That will tell me if it's viable to maybe through some other signaling mechanism that I really don't want to add, but I just want to know if it's possible. Yeah, to get this status changed if it's the first message. I don't know if that sentence I just said will make sense. I kind of jumped between two thoughts. But anyhow, once we get the pewter logo, I'm going to run this, and we do get a 400 response. So that means we could have a signaling mechanism here. Right, we shouldn't do that through the stream. That would be incorrect. But type stream could have a signaling mechanism, I suppose, to give us a 400 error. That's a solution that I'll investigate later. I do want to support errors during streaming, right? You might get an error in the middle of a stream from a model that can have errors mid completing or doesn't behave very well. So, or if you lose the connection with the a service provider, that's always a possibility. So that could happen for any model. So that needs to be there anyway. So I'm just going to use that. But uh, if we add this signaling mechanism, that's probably a better user experience, specifically for OpenRouter because of how it, um, because of where it throws its errors. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video interesting or helpful.